You are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. This is episode number 61. Today we're going to talk about Echostation. We're going to talk about some upcoming events and contests, as well as some Hamfests the next 2 weeks. We have a amateur radio blog article that I want to tell you all about, and we're going to wrap it up with some news from around the hobby. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis. My call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am your host for this podcast. This podcast is released every Thursday. You can find the show notes of today's episode with some additional information, some of the links we're going to talk about, and a whole lot more at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/61. That's the number 61. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. That is my Facebook page. I've recently started a Facebook group, which I wish I really would have started in the first place. But you can find that at everythinghamradio, or at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. Now, every week I have started a Facebook question of the week, and last week was, what was your favorite mode to operate? And I got a couple responses from that. One person said anything but CW, and one person said simplex VHF. And I asked him, why simplex VHF over repeaters? And do you do long distance simplex or just locally? He responded he did locally simplex or local simplex with big antennas. E-layer skip is great. Houston, Texas to Monterrey, Mexico on 2 meters. So, that is a long way to go on 2 meters. So that is the question of the week last week. This episode, I want to know what your mobile setup looks like. Take a picture of your mobile setup and leave it in the comments of the question on the Facebook group. And I will share it on the page as well. So those of you that have not joined the group, we'll have a link to the group, and you can join the group and join into the conversation. But what does your mobile setup look like? Let's see. You can also find me on Twitter, and there you can find me at K5CLM. So, what are we talking about today? Well, over the next, probably 6 weeks or so, we're going to be talking about different things that you can do with a rig blaster. And the reason behind that is because West Mountain Radio has re-upped as a sponsor. Thank you very much, West Mountain Radio. Make sure you check out their site and buy something and get your free gift. I'll have more information a little later in the show about that. But one of the things that I've been wanting to talk about for a while is things you can do with a rig blaster. So today we're going to talk about a program called Echostation, and we're going to talk about what it all can do. But first off, I also have some other news. I have a new sponsor coming on board next month, and the first Thursday in March he will be starting, or first Thursday in April rather, he will be starting, and also he's going to be providing some short guest segments, I guess you can say, giving a teacher's perspective on different questions in the question pool. I don't know if he's going to stick to just technician, or if he's going to go with general and extra as well. But he's going to have a short segment. It's probably going to be every other episode. I'm not sure. We haven't quite worked out the logistics exactly on that, but he's going to be doing that and giving us a little bit more information. So thank you for that, and stay tuned to the first episode, I believe, in April for that guest. It'll be the first or second. I haven't quite decided which. Probably going to be the second, I think, or the first rather. But we'll see. I will let you know with the first episode, which will be episode number 63, I think, is where you will find out who the new sponsor is and what the guest segments will be all about. So I'm going to leave that kind of a cliffhanger for y'all. So you're going to have to tune in to find out. Also, I want to thank all of y'all that that sent in a entry for the KB6NU ebooks. We did announce the winner last week. I've gotten several other emails wanting to get involved in that entry. Unfortunately, the contest was over with, and then the winner was announced last week. I'm sorry, y'all, I cannot talk tonight. This has been a very interesting weekend for me. Well, my work weekend, very, very interesting. And tomorrow's going to be a very busy day for me, but y'all don't need to know about all of that. But actually, I do want to tell y'all a little bit about that. And if you don't want to hear about this, I totally understand. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you anyways, because it's kind of good news. Kind of good news for me. Has nothing to do with this podcast. Has nothing to do with this amateur radio in general at all. But it has a lot to do with my family. As I'm sure a bunch of you know, if you've gone to my website and looked at the About Me page, or have heard me in the previous episode hear me say that I'm a foster parent. We have had about 17 kids over the past 2.5 years that we've been doing this. We've been extremely blessed by all the kiddos and the changes in their lives that we have seen. Well, we had a group of kiddos, 3 of them, that came to us in October of 2015. And they were with us up until August of last year. And then they went home. Their biological parents were doing great, and they were reunited with them, and we thought it was all done and over with. Well, little did we know that a short 3.5 months later, they would be brought back into foster care. And we were just so happened that 3 of the kids that we had left the Friday before, and my wife and I had taken a weekend off with just 2 of the kids that we had to do some cleaning, get ready for the next group of kids. We were going to reopen on Monday. Well, we reopened, and it just so happened that their CPS worker gave us a call, said, hey, these kids are coming back into care. Do you have any openings? Absolutely, bring them on. So they came to us I want to say like the 4th of December maybe, and their 6-month-old baby brother came to us in February. So now we have all 4 siblings, and that's all we have right now. Well, we're coming up on the end of their case, and we are so close to being able to adopt them, all 4 of them, that I can just taste it. And today we went to mediation with the bio parents for them to relinquish their rights because they're up for termination. Unfortunately, didn't work out where they relinquished, but it's still a possibility. So now I have about 3.5 weeks or so left. About 3 weeks by the time this airs to continue on what we're doing before the final court dates, where we know whether or not we'll be able to adopt these kiddos or not. So please pray for my family. We have a lot of ups and downs with these kiddos, and they are just doing absolutely awesome, and we love them half to death. So yeah. So anyways, off of that side note, I just had to tell somebody, y'all. I know it, like I said, I know it has nothing to do with amateur radio, nothing to do with this podcast, but I'm happy. I am ecstatic of where this is going. I got into this whole fostering thing 2.5 years ago, and for reasons that I'm not going to say here, but I never really figured that I would go from 0 kids to 4 kids that I can call my own that had my last name in such a short period of time. 2.5 years. So it's my wife and I've had 5 kids at once. We've had 2 kids at once. We've had every number in between. A couple days I think we just had 1 kid, which was kind of weird, but so it's not a whole lot of difference as far as taking care of the kids wise, but it's a whole lot different when you can actually say, these are my kids. They have my last name. So anyways, off of that, I'm sorry for the sidebar there. But like I said, I'm just ecstatic, and my wife's ecstatic, and the kids don't know a whole lot yet, but that will come with time. So, anyways, on to the topic of today. All right, so like I said, today we're going to be talking about a software program called Echostation. I've used this program for, probably 15 years now or so, and this goes along with another piece of hardware that you've heard me talk about, or a piece of hardware that you've heard me talk about over the past 3 months from West Mountain Radio called a Rig Blaster. Over the next 6 weeks or so, we're going to be talking about different things that you can use a Rig Blaster for or with. But this program is a very neat little program. It's very lightweight, and it runs, unfortunately, it only runs on Windows machines, but it'll run all the way down to like a Pentium 1, and potentially even like maybe a 486 computer, if those are even still around. So these are great things to have. This program is a great thing to have for your club, for a emergency situation, and things like that. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about a program called Echostation. And what this program is a software-driven repeater system, basically. You can use it as a full duplex repeater. You can use it as a simplex repeater. You can use it as a auto patch, and you can use it as just an announcement machine. So we're going to kind of a shallow dive into each section of these a little bit and talk about what each one of them are and how you can use this one small piece of software in a computer, a relatively old computer, to make a emergency repeater, or a just a local simplex repeater, or one of the other things. So first off, let's talk about a full duplex repeater. Now, I'm sure that most, if not all of you, know what a repeater is, but in case you don't, you can go back and listen to episode number 34 of my podcast, and you can find that at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/34. That's number 34. And listen to that episode and learn more about them. Now, what makes this program different is that you don't have to have all the hardware that you have to have for a permanent repeater. You still have to have 2 radios. You have to have a receive radio and a transmit radio, and possibly 2 antennas, or at least have a diplexer to take 2 radios into 1 antenna. If you get like a good, well, I guess you really can't even do that, because you have to have it for, just scratch that. So you have to have 2 antennas. But have 2 antennas that are, spaced fairly decent apart. I think it's like half a wavelength or so apart from each other. 2 radios, and this piece of software hooked to a computer, running in a computer, running through your Rig Blaster. The only thing you don't need, really, is the duplexer cans, what they call them, which can be very expensive, and the repeater controller, which can also be pretty expensive as well. So this program acts as the repeater controller. But it doesn't do just, controlling the repeater, keying the radios and turning off the radios and stuff like that. It also has a bunch of other functionality to it as well. You can change each of the settings through a DTMF code, just like a regular repeater. It handles the things like IDing the repeater. It handles you can do voice recordings, announcements, and stuff like that, or voice ID. It handles the timeout times. If you're keying up on a regular repeater, when you key up for too long, typically about 3 minutes or so, the repeater transmitter will shut off and won't reset until you unkey. Well, it does the same thing. You can also set the squelch tail time, how long the repeater transmits after the user unkeys. It does all this stuff that is normally associated with the repeater. So it's a really neat piece of software. So that's a full duplex repeater. What about a simplex repeater? Now, these aren't as common as a full duplex repeater is. However, there is certain appeal to a simplex repeater. They're great for just local area type things. They don't have to be coordinated like a regular repeater does, and they're not as, I guess, maybe user friendly as a regular repeater is, or as a full duplex repeater is, because basically what it does is it has you can set the time limits or so from anywhere from like 5 seconds up to 5 minutes, I think, in recording time. And basically what it does is it listens to the radio, and when somebody keys up, it records everything that they say. And once they unkey their radio and the simplex repeater loses the signal, it will then take and replay what it recorded. So basically it's just kind of like a parrot. If you say something, a parrot says it back. And that's basically what it does. And that's basically all it does, really. But they, like I said, they are not as common, and they are not as maybe user friendly, I guess you could say, because it is, if you're close enough to hear the person that you're talking to, granted you shouldn't be talking through a simplex repeater, but you have to listen to whatever they say twice. You have to listen to them say it, then you have to listen to the repeater replaying what they said, and then you respond. And if they can hear you too, then they have to listen to your response, and they have to listen to the repeater's response. So it takes twice as long to get through a conversation. But if you live farther out and you can't hear each other on simplex, then it's a nice extra little boundary type, or extra range boost, I guess you could say. We actually had a situation with a simplex repeater locally here in my area. I want to say probably 8 years ago or so. We had a sheriff's deputy that's a ham, and I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. I think I've told this story before, but anyways, he's a ham, and somehow his radio got turned to the local sheriff's office frequency, and his simplex repeater was turned on, and his radio, I guess, was modified where it could transmit on that frequency. And so for about 4 or 5 hours or so, everything that was said across the radio was actually said twice. And I don't know what all became of it, but we ended up tracking it down. I got called out by my boss. I was a dispatcher there at the time, and got called out by my boss to help track this signal down. And it was really interesting to come to find out that it was one of the sheriff's deputies. But anyways, that stuff shouldn't happen, but it sometimes does. So, okay. So next off, let's talk about the auto patch feature. The auto patch feature could be for a simplex auto patch or a full duplex repeater auto patch. Now, a lot of times, or nowadays, radios aren't really designed to handle the load that a simplex auto patch has to have. And the reason behind this is a full duplex auto patch or a full duplex repeater auto patch has one radio that listens, one radio that transmits, right? So whenever the signal on the receiver stops receiving something, the auto patch knows to unkey the transmitter and listen to the phone call. Well, with a simplex auto patch, the radio has to, or the software will cause the radio to unkey like every couple seconds or something like that to see if the what's the word I'm looking for? The user is still talking, or vice versa. So or to see if there's a signal coming in on the receiver is what I'm trying to say. So the switching of the transmitter to the receiver on a fast, high rate of speed really can wear out a radio. So simplex auto patches really aren't a very good idea. But they are there, and you can use them. In this program, you can use for a regular repeater auto patch as well, or 2 radios or whatever. So basically, if you don't know what an auto patch is, basically an auto patch connects your radio to the phone line, you can make phone calls, is basically what an auto patch is. I actually had one when I was in college. A local radio or a local repeater had a auto patch on it, and when I didn't have phone or didn't have my cell phone with me, I could actually key up the repeater and make a phone call. You can order a pizza or whatever. Everybody that's listening on the repeater will know what you're having for supper and know where you live. But you very well could. You can use it for calling 911 or stuff like that. So they can be very handy to have, but unfortunately, maybe fortunately, with the cell phone usage being so robust and widespread, the auto patch has kind of gone to the wayside. The last mode that this program does is what I've used mostly on it, and that is the announcement machine. This functionality of it is basically you record an announcement, or you record, say your local net runs at a certain time of the day every Thursday night or something like that. And you can go on there and record something saying, Club Net tonight at 7 p.m. on this frequency or whatever. And set it to record on or play on a schedule. Maybe first thing in the morning, maybe at noontime, maybe at 5, and then maybe 30 minutes right before the net goes, to help people remember that, hey, there's a net tonight, maybe I want to check in. Or on club meeting night, have it run a couple times during the day. Or if you're having a parade or a bike race or something, have it announce every 6 hours or something like that the week before. So things like this are great. You can also do it for things like, I know a lot of repeaters actually rebroadcast the ARRL Newsline podcast. I know my local club here does. After our weekly net is over, they play the Newsline every Sunday night. So you can use this program for that. You can import the MP3 file into the program and play it, and it will automatically, you can set a time to unkey, every, 5 minutes or something like that. It'll unkey and let your repeater ID, or whatever your time at is, every 3 minutes or something, whatever the break is in the file, it will automatically unkey, let your repeater ID, and then start back up. So it's a pretty neat little program. And it's really relatively cheap. And you can download it and install it for free with limited use for a month, I think, to try it out. And then you have to buy it, and it's $20. It's a $20 bill. You really can't beat that for the functionality, the lightweight of this program. But like I said, it only works on Windows. So before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about our podcast sponsor. All right, I would like to thank my sponsor, West Mountain Radio, for your 3 months of sponsoring this podcast. Thank you very much for your support. And for all of y'all listeners, thank you very much as well. But West Mountain Radio has been great. For those of you who don't know who they are, they make some awesome equipment that I've had the pleasure of using for over about 15 years now. They make several pieces of equipment that are so well built and are so useful. Things like the Rig Blaster, the Rig Runner, and the DC to Go boxes. And that's what I want to talk to y'all about today. Now, these are neat little cases you can put a battery in to protect your station's floor or from the unfortunate battery accident. However, there is so much more that they are used for as well. These boxes have a Super Power Gate PG40 and a Rig Runner mounted to the side of them. There's two models that we're talking about in today. One of them has a Rig Runner 4007U, and one of them has a Rig Runner 4008. Now, first off, the Power Gate provides you an uninterruptible power supply in case you lose AC power. It'll automatically switch over to the battery in the box. This is the perfect solution for a repeater backup or an event or something like that, like field day or something. Great to have. You plug in your power supply to it, you plug in your battery to it, and you go out from there to your Rig Runner and your station. And if you lose AC power from your power supply, it will automatically kick over to your battery. Now, the two Rig Runners that are on there, the 4008 comes with 40 amps of DC power coming in, and it's spread over 8 slots. The 4007U also has 40 40 amps coming in, but it's spread over 7 slots. However, it has some other features that make it a better choice, in my opinion. It has things like a digital load meter, a USB charging port, as well as a solid state push button on-off switch, and automatic shut-off for high and low voltages. Both of these are mounted to the side of the battery box. All you have to do is drop in a battery, hook up your wires, and you're ready to go. Now, I've included links in the show notes of today's episode to both of them. The one with the 4008 runs $249.95, and the 4007U is $269.95. $20 more for a lot of extra features. I highly recommend you go with the 4007U. Now, if these two are not to your liking, there are other pre-made choices that you can go to if you go to their website and check it out, or you can custom make your own, however you want to do it. But the one thing that I really need to tell you all about, go to everythinghamradio.com/WMR, and it will be taken to a page on their site that will show you a free gift that you will get because you heard about it on Everything Ham Radio. You get a free USB power monitor. That is a great little monitor, and you get it free with your purchase. Information is on that page. So again, go to everythinghamradio.com/WMR for more information. All right, so we are back, and we're going to continue our talk about the program called Echostation. The program itself is super easy to set up, and like I said before, it's only for Windows, so you can't use it on a Mac or a Linux machine. But it would be nice if you could, if it was, since it is such a low power consumption program, it would be awesome if you could put it on Linux and put it on like an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, but unfortunately you can't. The program itself is only about 3 megabytes to download, so it's super fast, super easy. You get a 30-day free trial period before you buy, so you can test it out and see if it is something you use. Once you decide to buy, the program is only $19.95, so it's pretty cheap as well. After you download it and get it installed, the first time you run the program, it's going to ask you for your call sign. Until you purchase the program, you can't change a lot of the settings other than just basically your call sign and what mode you want, whether it's repeater, simplex repeater, auto patch, or announcement machine. Once you have these, the basic settings, that your call sign and what mode you want to work in, there is some settings you can change, especially after you buy the program. Under the repeater tab of the settings, you can control things like how long your repeater can be queued before it shuts off, which is called the timeout timer. How long the repeater transmits after the user unkeys, which is called the tail timer. The courtesy tone, the tone that you hear at the end of each repeater transmission. All these can be set. They're all programmable according to how you want to do it. Under the DTMF tab under settings, there's all kind of commands that you can set up, all totally customized to your liking. You can do things like turning on and off the repeater, turning the auto patch on and off if you have one installed, accessing the auto patch, how to answer incoming calls through the auto patch, turning different announcements on and off, and so much more. It's very nice, and it's not only used for over-the-air things, but you can also do it another way as well. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. On the auto patch setting, you can, if you decide to have an auto patch, whether it's a simplex repeater or duplex repeater, there are several settings that you can set. On the status tab of the auto patch settings, you can choose whether you want to provide forward call patch outgoing calls or reverse call patch incoming calls. You can set the time limit for each of those calls. If you want only 3 minutes of call length total, you can set that. If you want 5 minutes, whatever. 30 seconds, you can set it to however long you want. You can set your dial rules. If you have to dial a 9 to get out, or if you want to go only to a certain area code. If you're only going to be using it for a local area code, you can set it to where it'll automatically dial the area code, and then all the user has to put in is the 7 digits. You can also choose whether you want to have long distance phone calls, which most people have turned off. And last but not least, you can choose whether you want the phone number read back to the user. The user punches in the number, the repeater will automatically read back the number, and then make the phone call. You can set the audio levels of both going to the radio and going to the phone call. So, the repeater coming from the phone call to the radio and out, and also from the radio to the phone call. So both of those can be set up as well. There's a logs tab where you can view every call that's been made that has gone through your auto patch. And on the last tab, it's called the device tab. You can change the settings of the modem that you're using. So super easy, super easy setup. Now, the last thing is the control link. And this is where I was talking about a little bit ago with the DTMF codes. Now, what if your system is somewhere where you don't have physical access to the repeater or to the program all the time? Or maybe you don't have radio access to it all the time. If it's off somewhere, where you can't reach it with a radio, or it would take a long time to get there. You can do two ways actually on on changing the settings of your repeater. The first option is a dial-in access. If you have a phone line attached to your system, and you can dial in using the phone, and then use the number buttons on your phone with your DTMF commands, just like you would on the radio, and you can change all the settings that way. The second option is a web interface. If you have internet access at the repeater site, or maybe you have your repeater hooked into a ham mesh network, you can go through that way and change the settings on your Echostation's built-in web interface. I am so sorry, guys. I cannot talk today, and it's driving me crazy. So that's the program. It's a very, very nice little program. What would you really use it for? Okay. This is a neat little way to have a temporary setup of a repeater. Let's say that you're in a disaster, or you're doing security somewhere and your HTs are just not cutting it, and you don't want to do a crossband repeater. So you can go and set up a couple antennas, set up a couple radios and a computer, and have a full duplex repeater that's temporary, that might have a couple mile radius or a couple mile range or something like that. And you're not going to interfere with another repeater that's local. You can do this. We actually did this on we had a youth camp that we did security for, and we used this program to set up a full duplex repeater, set it in the middle of the campground that was spread out over half a mile or so, and it allowed us to use our handhelds on the extremely low power setting and make our radios last all day long. We had a communications van, and we had this set up in, and it made it great to talk back and forth across the property. So that's just one use of it. If you have, maybe you have a major disaster and the local repeater goes down, you can use this as a temporary repeater, or maybe a fill-in repeater if you don't have access in a certain area or something like that. You can use this as well. So there are a bunch of uses for this program, and like I said, with the announcement thing, for running announcements, playing back this podcast, but maybe you want to play this podcast over your radio. I don't really see that, since it takes typically about an hour or so, but if you do like the ARRL Newsline, or the Doctor Is In or something like that, a shorter podcast, maybe you might do over the air, or a news broadcast you might put over the air. So yeah, this program, great little program. I will have links to where you can find it in the show notes of today's episode. And this program is super easy. It has been tested with every model of Rig Blaster that West Mountain Radio puts out, and works phenomenally. It's super easy to do. The receive side, you can use either Vox or a control line, and same for the transmit side. And all the settings are in the program. So super easy to use, super awesome little program. But yeah. Alright, so that pretty much wraps that up. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the Ham blog spotlight. So, as most of you know, I'm pretty good friends with the guys over at Ham Radio 360 podcast with Kale and Jeremy and George. And if you haven't heard the Ham Radio 360 podcast, it's a very nice podcast. 1 week they will do just a general ham radio topic, and then the opposite Tuesday is their Workbench podcast, which they kind of deep dive into technical aspects of the hobby. And in the last episode, they interviewed several listeners on different projects that they had on their Workbench, and it really got me thinking about, some of the stuff that we do as hams in a DIY type environment, things that we build, 'cause way back when when you didn't buy everything and you built stuff, you built all your radios and your receivers and transmitters and antennas and everything, everything that went into this hobby, you built instead of buying. And now it's really along the lines of wanting to do it, kind of like in the same aspect of CW. It's now that CW is not a requirement of the license, it's being learnt a lot more because people actually want to. Well, it's the same thing really, I think, with the DIY community. It's, even though you don't have to build it, it's fun to build it, and a lot of people do it. And I was looking on the line this week while I was trying to fix my computer because it decided to stop working on me. Good this time. I'm actually buying a new computer tomorrow. Yay! I'm stoked. But while I was searching online on my phone, I found a website, and it had a really nice write-up on a DIY software-defined transceiver. And I read through the article, and it was a recent article, and it made me want to go back and read some of the previous one because it was an update. So I wanted to go back and look at it. Well, the original article was written several years ago, but the author of it has done several updates over the past couple of years. And the look of it really kind of reminds me of like the Elecraft KX2 to a certain degree. And there is a link in the show notes where you can go directly to that segment of his blog. But his blog is called High on Solder. The radio that he is built and is continuing to upgrade is called the MCHF. I really recommend that you go over there and check that out. Go to the show notes of today's episode and look for the Ham Blog Spotlight and check out his site. All right, so let's talk about some upcoming events and contests. All of the times that I'm going to be saying are going to be in Zulu time or UTC time, so make sure you adjust accordingly. First off, on March the 20th, from 100 hours to 300 hours is the Run for the Bacon QRP contest. March 20th from 1800 to 2059 is the Bircharest contest. March 21st at 1700 to the 22nd at 1700. Then a couple days later on the 25th at 1700 to the 26th at 1700 is the CLARA Chatter Party. March 25th from 0 hours to 2359 is the FOC QSO Party. The 25th from 0 hours to the 26th at 2359 is the CQWW WPX contest on single sideband. March 29th from 2000 hours to 2100 hours is the UK EICC 80 meter contest. And I thought of taking that off because it's one of those recurring ones, but I didn't. I will work on that. I actually made this on a different computer since my computer took good. Okay. April 1st from 0 hours to the 2nd at 2359 is the 15 meter slow scan TV dash contest. April 1st from 400 hours to 800 hours is the LZ Open 40 meter sprint contest. April 1st from 1000 hours to the 2nd at 400 hours is the PODXS 070 Club PSK 31 Flavors contest. April 1st from 1400 hours to the 2nd at 400 hours, and then from 1400 to 2000 hours on the 2nd is the Missouri QSO Party. The Mississippi QSO Party is also on the 1st from 1400 hours to the 2nd at 200 hours. The SPDX contest is on the 1st from 1500 to 1500 on the 2nd. The EARTTY contest is on the 1st from 1600 hours to the 2nd at 1600 hours. The North American Single Sideband Sprint contest is on the 2nd from 0 hours to 400 hours. The ARS Spartan Sprint is April 4th from 100 hours to 300 hours. And that wraps it up. All the information was taken from the WA7BNM contest calendar, which you can find a link to in the show notes of today's episode. Alright, let's talk about some Hamfests. On the 24th will be the Texas State Convention Greater Houston Hamfest in Rosenberg, Texas. The 25th will be the Charleston Hamfest and Computer Shop in Charleston, West Virginia. The Fredfest Indoor Hamfest in Frederick, Maryland. Ides of March Hamfest in Union City, Tennessee. The MARK Sullivan Hamfest in Sullivan, Illinois. Midwinter Madness in Buffalo, Minnesota. Springtime OARS Club Hamfest in Mount Vernon, Missouri. The Titusville Tailgate in Titusville, Florida. And the Utah Digital Communications Conference in Sandy, Utah. On the 26th, we have the JSARS Hamfest by the Shores in Toms River, New Jersey. The next weekend, on the 31st, we have the Maine State Convention in Lewiston, Maine, and the Nevada State Convention NVCON in Las Vegas, Nevada. Go there and get you some gambling on a little bit. And April the 1st, April Fool's Day, is the April Fool's Fest in Noble, Illinois. The Columbus, Indiana Hamfest in Columbus, Indiana. Hanging Judge Hamfest in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The LARC Fest in Longmont, Colorado. Lincoln Trail ARC's 38th Annual Hamfest in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. The MCAC/MAARS Swap Fest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And last but not least, the Portsmouth Radio Club Hamfest in Portsmouth, Ohio. All the information for the Hamfest were taken from the ARRL Hamfest calendar, which you can find a link in the show notes of today's episode. Alright, so in the news today, for all y'all DXers out there, the Daily DX has celebrated its 20th anniversary as of 3/17 of 2017. In the ARRL newsfeed, it says the Daily DX, an email subscription-only newsletter edited by Bernie McLeany, W3UR, is celebrating its 20th anniversary on St. Patrick's Day. The email newsletter covers DX, Islands on the Air, and contesting news from around the globe. It was 20 years ago today that 100 beta testers received the first issue of the Daily DX, McClinney said in the March 17th edition. On his 65 charter subscribers, 38 are still on board. Since then, more than 15,000 amateur radio operators from more than 200 countries have experienced the Daily DX and the Weekly DX. I'd like to thank KE3Q, Rich Boyd, who helped produce the idea and actually came up with the Daily DX name. Boyd continues his association with the Daily DX, editing many of the Monday issues. To the subscribers, thank you for your financial support and input. Without it, there would be no Daily DX, he says. Also expressing his appreciation to the newsletter contributors. Well known in the DX community, McClinney also is a contributing editor for the How's DX column in QST magazine. Nevada Aries team has been honored on 3/17/2017. The ARRL posted, Washoe County, Nevada Aries was among the disaster response groups honored by the Washoe County Board of Commissioners on February 21st. A board proclamation recognizes the efforts of these groups in two recent disasters, October's Little Valley Fire and January's flood and blizzard. The commissioner said that the region relied on a multi-tiered emergency response system to protect lives and properties during the two emergencies. Other agencies honored included the American Red Cross, Washoe County Citizens Corp, volunteer organizations active in disaster, and the Salvation Army. A video showed how county staff responded to the extensive flooding in January that caused millions of dollars in damage, thanks to John Bigley, N7UR. You know, these stories like this really, I don't know, they kind of touch my heart. You know, this is why I got involved in amateur radio, was to help people to do these type of things, and it was really the entire reason that I got involved with it. My church group is one of the agencies in the volunteer organization active in disaster, or called VOAID for short. We were one of the major players, right along with the American Red Cross and the Salvation Army, and several other entities as well. But the reason I got involved was with my community services group because of a massive $2,000 cell phone bill in a set of Houston floods back in 1988, I believe it was. And the director at the time wanted a better way to communicate other than just cell phones, because cell phones were not reliable, especially back then. And cell phone systems get so overly used that even if you have cell service, you can't get through. So we started a club, and we help in communications with our organization. And oftentimes, even though we as a group, or even a local group of an Aries organization or something along those lines, it's not very often that we as ham radio operators get recognized. So it's really awesome to see that this Board of Commissioners in this county recognized their local Aries team. So kudos to the Board of Commissioners, and congratulations to the Aries team for being recognized, and thank you for your volunteering. Alright, so the last news article that I'm going to talk about kind of hit my eye, because I saw a recent Facebook post from a local club here that says that one of the high schools here in my county are actually on the roster to contact the space station. And this article caught my eye because it talks about that. The ARISS deadline looms to accept proposals to host contacts with the space station crew. And this was released today when I'm recording this on 3/21/17. And it says, the deadline is April 15th for schools and formal or informal education institutions and organizations, individually or working in concert, to submit proposals to host amateur radio contacts next year with the ISS crew members. Amateur radio on the ISS anticipates the contacts will take place between January 1st and June 30th, 2018. Crew scheduling and ISS orbits will determine the exact contact dates. Proposal information and documents are on the ARRL website. To maximize the radio contact opportunities, ARIS seeks proposals from schools and organizations that can draw a large number of participation and integrate the contact into a well-developed educational plan. Each FM voice contact lasts about 10 minutes, the length of the typical overhead ISS pass from horizon to horizon. Scheduled ham radio contacts with ISS crew members allow students to interact with astronauts and cosmonauts through a question and answer format. Participants and the audience alike can learn firsthand from astronauts or cosmonauts what it's like to live and work in space, and learn about space research on the ISS. Students will be able to observe and learn about satellite communications, wireless technology, and radio science. Because of the nature of human spaceflight and the complexity of scheduling activities aboard the ISS, organizations must demonstrate flexibility to accommodate change in contact dates and times. To help organizations prepare proposals, IRISS offers 1-hour online information sessions designed to provide more information regarding U.S. ARIS contacts and the proposal process, as well as to provide an avenue for interested organizations to ask questions. Attending an online information session is not required, but is strongly encouraged. In the U.S., ARIS is a collaborative effort between the ARRL and AMSAT in partnership with NASA and the Center for Advancement of Science and Space. Contact the ARISS for more information. Now, this article, like I said, really caught my eye because my local high school is actually going to be doing this. I don't think they have an exact date, but hopefully today I can actually go and check it out. I think that would be really neat to hear the kids ask questions to the astronauts and the cosmonauts that are up on the ISS. So I'm definitely going to be paying attention to that little bit of news. So if you would like to get a school to contact the ISS, there is links in the show notes and on the ARRL website. So that pretty much wraps up the news and pretty much the podcast. So I guess that's pretty much it. That pretty much wraps up the episode. I would like to invite each one of y'all to make sure you tune in next week. Next week, we're going to be talking with some people from the DX Beacon Network. I'm still working out the details, but I think we're going to have time to do an interview with them. So make sure you stay tuned to next episode for that. I think it's really going to be a very interesting conversation. I've wondered what the DX Beacon Network was all about and how it worked and so on and so forth. So I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting information. So any of y'all that are interested in DX communications or the DX Beacon Network, make sure you tune in next week. I want to thank each one of y'all for listening to my podcast. Thank you for the emails that you've sent and the comments that you've left, both on Facebook and on my show notes. If you like what you've heard here, please make sure you share it with your friends. Let them know about this podcast and what we're all about. I mean, I am here for y'all. I am here to learn just like y'all learn, and I pretty much learn something new every time, so I hope y'all do too. If you would like to support this podcast, there are several ways you can do it, and you can find more information on that on the support page at everythinghamradio.com/support. Super easy. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal. You can become a monthly contributor through Patreon and donate $1 an episode or $5 an episode, $10 or $25. Whichever you want to do, if you can do it, I greatly appreciate it. And last but not least, you can shop on Amazon.com through my affiliate link. If you are looking for QSL cards, make sure that you head on over to KB3IHF. Make sure you head on over to his website, and there is a link in the show notes to his website. If you go there and you want to order some QSL cards from him, make sure that you mention that you heard about him on the Everything Ham Radio podcast. I will get a small advertising fee from him, so that will help the podcast as well. That pretty much wraps it up. Next week I'm going to have a new computer, so I'm going to be working all the kinks and stuff out of it, hopefully between now and then. And hopefully it might even sound a little better. And I hope to get an air conditioner installed in this little shack, because today it's like 86 degrees, I think. Yesterday we actually broke the record for heat. It was 92 here in Texas, so it was the hottest day in March since like 2006. So a lot of stuff going on. Hopefully next week we'll have a great episode, so make sure you tune in to that. If you have not done so, please make sure you subscribe to my email list to receive emails when I publish a new podcast episode, or on the rare occasion that I do a blog post. I don't send a whole lot of other emails out, so you're not going to be spammed by me. So super easy to do. You can go over to the show notes, and there's a form in the bottom of the page you can fill out, or you can go to everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. And subscribe that way. Once you fill out the form, you click the Sign Me Up button, and you'll get an email from me with a link that you'll need to click on in order to start receiving emails. Like I said, I hate spam as much as anyone does, so I promise I will not do that. I will not sell your email address or rent your email address out to anyone, and I will not be sending a whole lot of emails out to you. So also check me out on Facebook. Facebook group is at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. You can follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio, and you can follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. All these links you can find in the menu bar at the top of the page under social. And I guess that pretty much wraps it up. So until next time, this is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike signing out. 73, y'all.